Okay. So thanks for joining. Today we're going to go through a couple of options as it relates to live transfers using the boberdoo system. Many of you know that you can route calls through, and over the time, the evolution of live transfers has changed, and call center software capabilities have changed. Back in the old days, all this was done through two separate lead types and then merging them together. But today, with ping post for calls and being able to post data into the inbound phone lead type can really simplify matters. So we're going to go through a couple of those options in the process here. So we have Brett on.
Hello.
I won't let Brett share his video. He's got a face for radio. I'm the good-looking one of the bunch here, so you'll see my face for most of it, and I'll be interjecting and interrupting Brett as we go. But just to give you an idea of what we're going to cover today, how boberdoo defines live transfers. We have a relatively new, about a year-old phone wizard that makes that process easier. And then the nuts and bolts of it is going to be live transfers without data, live transfers with data, and then the different options when you do have the data. And then other options depending on your use case as it relates to the phones and filter sets. And then we're going to end up with some things that you can enable to make sure that you're on top if there's any problems with phone routing on your partner side, and then also a drill down report to evaluate your call routing. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Brett here in a second. But in terms of what boberdoo defines as a live transfer, that would be versus just a raw call or a call itself coming from a website. In this case, there is a third party, typically referred to as a call center or an agent, that is speaking with the lead, and then they initiate the call into the boberdoo system and then make that handoff. That can either be a live handoff or just the connection, and remove themselves from the call, leaving the lead and that lead buyer in the boberdoo system on that call. In terms of the process from the call center side, the nice thing is that call center agent can do the exact same thing every time. It isn't dependent on the match. They can post the data in first, then send the phone call. The system does all of the matching, and that allows you to really make that a consistent process on your call center side. I think anybody on this call here knows there's a huge variance in the capabilities of call centers, and so there are options for working with ones that might not be up to the technical challenge, and we can cover those at the end. So for a live transfer, there is that without data. So many of our clients are doing their qualifications, and then they're just using boberdoo to transfer that call to a given partner. And then for most of the cases now, we're going to be talking about what happens when you have data to proceed that incoming transfer call. So Brett, I'm going to kick it over to you to go through the phone wizard.
Sounds good. So thank you everyone for joining. And so if we go into your boberdoo system, you'll have a phone routing tab if you're enabled to have the phone routing set up. And in order to use this, you just have to be synced up with Twilio. And so if you have a Twilio account, it's as simple as just copying and pasting your credentials from Twilio into boberdoo. And so under settings, Twilio settings, here are the two values that you would copy and paste from your Twilio account to make sure that your boberdoo system is integrated to do phone calls. So that's really the only requirement for this setup to get started. Once we have done that, now when we navigate to the phone routing tab, you'll see there's a little dashboard here, kind of like the home page, just going to show you a quick overview, any active calls, current totals, things like that. But what we want to look at closely here is the Manage IPR Campaigns tab. When you click here, you'll see any campaigns you've previously set up listed here. And then this number is how many phone numbers you have assigned currently into this campaign. You can see the number by clicking the show phone. It gives you a pop-up that shows you what the phone number is, and then what the options are for that specific number. So what happens when you dial this number? What message plays? If there's no buyers, where should it go? Should it hang up? Duplicate check, so on and so forth.
And so, Brett, while you're in here, a couple of things that I would chime in with, as you have in your welcome message, silence. In many cases, that call center is taking the disclaimer on the front end, and so you do not need to have anything to interfere in the transfer, but in other cases, they may not. And so there are other options. You can build your own. We have a default one that just notifies them of the call recording. The default phone number and the duplicate check that Brett has enabled is, that I would call out. That duplicate check is really use case dependent. If you are working with a call center that has a lot of problems making that connection, the duplicate check will route that call back to the original buyer, so that, and just consider it a continuation of the original call. If you uncheck that, then each one coming in is treated as new. And so depending on how you're working with that call center and then your buyers, you would want to or not want to check that option. And then, sorry, I tied the welcome message would be more tied to that quick hang up that Brett has. That is primarily a call center use case, which is you don't want to route that to a default number. If there's some reason that that transfer doesn't match, you can just hang up, play a text saying no matching partner back to the call center, and they can move on with their day. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so all good points there. Again, these are all options that can be adjusted per number, per each campaign, right? So right now it's set to silence. Maybe you want to change it later on. That's always can be done in the system just by coming here and choosing a new option. So this is the kind of the final result that we see after it's done. But let's start from scratch and say there was nothing here. There's a phone wizard that we see highlighted in blue here. If you click this and this page does not pop up, this means that your Twilio credentials that I spoke of before are not valid. Basically, this page can only start if you have an active working Twilio account, because it pulls the information from your Twilio account. So first, we're going to start off with the phone wizard for selecting the campaign. If you've already created one, you can simply choose which one in the dropdown. Otherwise, if it's brand new, you can just click Create New. It allows you to add it. Once you click this Save, it's going to add it to the dropdown here automatically. It's selected, and then move on from there. We're going to click Next. Next, we're going to do Select a Source. Again, these can always be changed after the fact too. It's just kind of like what is pre-selected when you're ordering the phone number, which is one of the final steps here. So if you have a source created, if not, any of these will work. Now it comes to all those messages we looked at the pop-up, or all those options that we looked at in the pop-up. The welcome message, it should what should happen if the call is unmatched, meaning a call comes in, there's no buyers available. Maybe it's from an Alaska zip code, right? And you don't have any buyers in Alaska. What should happen to that call? Should they hang up? Or should it actually go to another phone number as like a fallback or voicemail number? So the most common we see is to hang up the call, and then there's actually a text-to-speech option to, say something like, sorry, there's no one to help you at this time, before the call disconnects. Now the very final step here is selecting the phone number. And so this is a search through the Twilio phone system. And so you could actually, you want a toll-free number, you want a local number, whatever you're looking to have, you could do contains, ends with, to really find your perfect number. Or if it doesn't matter and you're just looking for a specific area code, you can try that. You click search here, it will show you, there's no options for 312, 773. This is why they've been adding new area codes to
Chicago. Try 608.
Yeah.
608. I would chime in here with, when you're talking about call centers and live transfers, you would 99% of the time want to use a local number because it's cheaper for you. You have a less per number and per minute cost with Twilio.
Correct. Yeah. Especially if, yeah, like you said, it's a call center, right? This number doesn't need to live on a radio ad or TV or at a website, something anyone has to remember. So if you can go the cheaper route and do the toll-free number or do the local number as opposed to the toll-free, that will be the option there. So you go through and click next, and then here's kind of like a summary of all the settings that you chose before, and we're going to order the phone number. So this actually sends the request to Twilio for that number to be ordered, and then we'll populate into the campaign that I had selected here, and usually 30 seconds to a minute it takes to be live. So let's come here. I can always click on the ongoing request browser as well. This shows me this is already live. So we did it at 12:46. It went live at 12:13:03. Now when I go back to the manage campaigns, there's two here because there was the one number previously and then the new 708 number I just ordered with all those same settings that I had pre-selected. And again, if I wanted to change it to the source at this time or the message, I could always do that. So this is the first step that is needed. This number is used as like the gateway number, right? If I were to dial this phone number from my cell phone right now, it would show up as a new call or a new lead in the lead system. And so kind of alluding to what Scott had said before, right? There could be raw calls that come through. There could be calls with the data that comes attached, right? And so the example of me just calling this number is an example of a raw call, right? So no other extra data would come through if I just dialed that number directly. So if I navigate to the leads page and we look at this second one from the bottom, you can see this one doesn't have a project. It doesn't have a zip. Only thing it has is a state and a origin phone, and the state is pre-filled based on the area code of the lead's phone number here. I can also click here to lead information. I can see, right, there's no first name, there's no last name, there's no basically any extra information, right? Because that's a raw call. So this would also be an example if your call center, the flow of their process wasn't done correctly. So if they would have sent the call in and then done the data transfer, this is also what it would look like. The call must follow the data for the flow to work properly. And that's very important because the call is, we're routing that call based upon the lead's information, right? So if the lead info came through and you have a buyer that says, I only want leads from 60654 and Windows, well, if a call comes through without that information, right, you're not able to properly route that call to that buyer because they don't take that information. So here, this example came through as unmatched because there was no buyer to take because the filter sets were configured to only accept roofing or windows and so on.
And so, Brett, that kind of rolls right into that first use case, which is live transfers without data. And so there really is no difference from Boberdoo's perspective when you're talking about live transfers without data, whether you're taking that terminating phone and putting it on a website, or you're taking that terminating phone and putting it into a call center software as the transfer number. From the lead system perspective, you're setting up a partner, making sure they have an active account, available funds, and a matching filter set. So you certainly would not want to put those project or zip code restrictions on it. But then that call routing works just like a data lead in every other case. So I think then we can take a look, Brett, at live transfers with data. So we would have, let's start with, there's two options when you have data. You have a direct post and a ping post option. So a direct post option would be that the call center submits the full data packet ahead of the call. So that would include project zip code, name information, any of that they're collecting. They post that with mode equals full, or excuse me, they post it in as a direct post, and that matches just like a data lead in the system. All of the data submitted, the project, the zip code are used to match to the filter sets. And then if they get a success, then they simply send the phone call to the terminating phone. So it's really a two-step process, which is send the data. If you get a success, send the call. And they send it to the same terminating phone every time.
That's exactly right. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if you want to jump in. So these specs here are just an example, obviously, for this demo. Just like data lead specs, you would have your own specs here. One thing to call out is that the API action is different than data. It is not ping post lead, but IPR submit lead.
A very common question I get a lot, and it makes sense. IPR, what does that stand for? What does it mean? Why do I see it everywhere? That's just a little abbreviation we use here for inbound phone routing. So this is literally inbound phone routing, submit lead. You're sending a lead to the phone lead type. So as Scott was saying, yeah, it's a normal API, just like you would have for getting a normal data lead into the system, except it's just a different action because it's going to a different place and kind of works a little bit differently. The best analogy I can give is that this is kind of like a hybrid of the phone call plus the ping post lead. So the hybrid sends the data first, and then the phone call transfer follows. And so you'll see here, really the only things that are required are the origin phone, which is the actual lead's phone number, right? And then the terminating phone, which is that transfer number that we just ordered in the system. So that tells, when you send the API in, that tells your boberdoo system, right, which campaign that call is attached to, right? So if you're sending calls into this campaign, the terminating phone is 608-413-3326. So it's kind of like a source, right? The source is even attached to this, but if you think of it, the campaigns are kind of like a tracking variable to know where the calls are coming from exactly. But then the phone number itself is kind of like the individual tracking variable. And so when we look at the specs, we can take a look at the full mode ones again. When it comes through, it has all this other information. And so if we look at the leads page, we did an example and this one. So this one came through. Can ignore the lead QC, but basically we found a buyer for it. Since the lead data came through with the extra zip, extra project, if we click on the information here, we can see all the information. So trusted forms and lead ID tokens from Janaya can even be passed through for a phone call if that is something that your buyers do require. So that along with any other data you want to pass through. So not only just the lead information, any other tracking variables you want to pass through as well. This is where sub ID and pub ID can even be utilized to further track where the lead came from. So we see all the lead information that came through first, then the phone call came through and it matched, and then matched to this buyer account. It rang to this account and the call lasted 13 seconds. If we wanted to listen to the recording, we can do that for any call in the system by clicking this phone services icon. And you'll have to be in secure mode to access it, but this will give you a player so you can play it in your browser here, or you can download it to your desktop. So
going back there, maybe if you could go into Wendy Wilson's filter set, and we could just do a preview of that option so that you can see what it connects to.
So here it matched to the Windows filter set. Take a look inside of that. And so here we see the lead price of 20, which matches what we see here for Wendy Windows. And then we said the main important thing, I believe, here was the filter for the project. So we scroll all the way down. We said they can get calls from both campaigns. However, they can only get the call if it has project equals Windows, right? And so that's why this one didn't match because it didn't have Windows. This one didn't match because it was blank. Again, that was the raw call that came through. So this one, right, because of that extra data, it's the only reason it was eligible to match to Wendy Windows. Without that data transfer beforehand, the call would not be eligible to match because it would be lacking the information that their filter set has flagged as required.
Cool.
To get around that, though, if say they wanted only Windows or if it's blank, that's what these except empty are for. So if they want to get it, if it's equals Windows or equals blank, they could do it that way.
Perfect. Thank you. So we're going to jump into the ping post option here in a second, but there were a couple of questions that came through that we want to address here. Somebody asked, is the local number to the caller or to me? So this would not have anything to do with the outbound calls being made from your call center. This would be the transfer number that you put into your call center software to transfer it to Bobbert. So it would be the local number that you own and is in your call center software as the transfer. The second one was, will we be covering how to set up live transfers in compliance with the FCC new mandates? That is not on topic for discussion. I think Brett mentioned something briefly there just a minute or two ago. That's probably as close to it as we will get. Our development has been around the data leads and then offering things like a click and a call in the response and how to handle dynamic consent that way. But as we learn more about live transfers, from our standpoint, this is more of a technical process. The one thing I would say to that is very similar to a dynamic consent data lead. And so in that case, the potential sellers are returned in the response so the consumer could select them. That same flow could be done with APIs back to your live transfer call center software. So for example, you could collect the qualifying questions, essentially ping those fields into the boberdoo system to have a dynamic list of sellers returned rather than just a bid, like a typical ping post. And then your call center could parse the match and then use a match with partner ID to post the data in so that it bypasses the distribution logic and only goes to that one partner. That would allow your call centers to potentially call on behalf of the one that is getting the lead, and the one getting that lead would be dynamic. And that's something that we'll be covering more. I just mentioned that more in theory. I know we have some clients with some pretty sophisticated call centers that are doing similar processes right now.
And could you confirm if what is it about consent and being transferred? Is that not?
I think there's questions around whether third-party consent can be transferred. And so an alternative to transferring of the consent would be if your call center agent knew at the time of connection who the end buyer was, they could formulate a script to call on behalf of that end buyer.
That makes sense. I got you.
So let's jump into ping post lead or the ping post option for live transfers. So this use case is going to be more of a company that typically will be a lead seller or reseller themselves and have live transfers. They're going to ping out to get the dynamic bids uh, for this live transfer. Also would have probably some other things returned in the response, and then the transfer to them work the same way.
Yep, thanks. So yeah, looking at this, my page here is for the ping post specs. You'll probably say it looks very similar to the other one. For the full mode, you are correct. It's almost identical except for a few small variations. One being the mode, right? It's not going to be mode equals full anymore. It's going to be mode equals ping for the ping, and then mode equals post for the post. For the ping though, right? Same kind of ideas. You're going to pass your tracking information. There's also optional settings here for returning back the dynamic price offer. So you return this price offer back to the lead reseller, or even returning back a minimum duration for how long the call must last in order for them to be successfully billed for the call. And so you'll see at the bottom here in an example of what that will look like in the response. But again, just kind of going through, there's no contact information ever sent on the ping, no origin phone, just the terminating phone, which is that transfer number, and then any ping fields like the project, if it's a home improvement, or maybe legal category, if it's legal, or date of birth, if it's health, and so on. And so with the limited fields, the ping comes through, and you can see here it'll have match status, and if there's a price offer, what that price offer of what you're willing to pay them, and then how long the call must last for them to be paid out that $50. So at this step here, it's just like a normal ping post where the vendor or the lead reseller has the decision. Okay, I'm being offered $50 for this call. Do I accept that call? If they do, they then send the post. And just like a regular post, it's going to have all the full contact information, the name, phone, email, and then obviously the lead ID from that ping response. The only difference then is after the post step is done, there's a third step which is the actual call transfer, right? So previously we looked at the direct post would be submit the data, then transfer the call. It's pretty similar, but it's ping, then post, then transfer the call, right? So the ping is like a check. Hey, can you take this call? Yes or no? And how much are you willing to pay for it? The post can be looked at as like a confirmation, like, yes, I'm accepting this bid. Here's all the lead information that's coming through, and here's that lead's phone number that you can be expecting a call coming through from. Ultimately, what happens when those three steps are done, now when we go to the leads page, you'll see here, this one came through. Same idea, found the ping, we then did the post, then the call came through, and now the call on the page here has, again, all that extra information. So full mode direct post, ping post, it doesn't matter really, right? The end result is the same. The data gets sent before the call comes through. The result of that is allowing you to filter additionally for the call, right? Send it to different buyers based upon the extra data. And on top of that, you can do the ping post for, maybe you have buyers that have their own ping post system, right? That's the beauty of boberdoo, right? You could plug that delivery in, and that way a ping comes in, or even a direct post comes in. If a buyer now has a ping post delivery for their phone system, if it's a match, it will ping to them. If they're dynamic pricing, it will grab their price offer. Otherwise, it will grab their price from the lead filter set, like we see here. And then the same idea can even be said about the transfer phone. That can even be dynamically set inside the custom delivery as well. So the leads page, right? Let's say I log in, and I just come to the leads page for the first time, and I click leads here and I go to inbound phone. By default, this will only show actual calls that come through. And what I mean by that is, let's say that someone sent the data for Wendy Wilson here and didn't send the call through after, right? that call wouldn't show up on the page, but the data still will exist inside the system. And it's technically under, if you do filter and do pings only. This is a short area. We'll plug a relatively new feature that's pretty nice for this exact use case, which is this template. And so for any time you're filtering a lot on the leads page with searches that are, commonly done, let's say, this one was the pings only, or maybe I want to do all pings and post, right? I can now save this option as a template. I start typing in data end calls. I click add. Now I click save. And now this allows me to easily filter by showing right here in the dropdown, without having to click the filter leads, selecting something. You can have these pre-templates loaded. So if I want to see data only, select data only, and I can click load. So these are ones where the data came through, but then the call didn't come through after it. And so it lives in the system as a ping only, right? It's waiting for the phone call to come through with the same phone number so that it can merge all of that data together. So same idea here, data only. I want to see data's end calls. I can click load and it will show me everything. Obviously, I can click the X to then reset that filter at any time. But yeah, this is a great feature, not even just for phone calls, for your regular leads page. Maybe it's certain sources that you save or search for a lot. So yeah, if you have questions on that, let us know. But that's a nice little new feature. Just wanted to plug real quick.
Thank you, Brett. I would say for the ping post part, maybe if you could go into the filter set of Johnny Dangerously there or Wendy Williams, either one. And I guess I would point out the margins. So when you're talking about a dynamic bid, it is a little different than data leads, best revenue scenario. But you do have, typically you'll have a margin that resides at the filter set level. So if it is a live transfer you're selling for $20, you typically would use a fixed margin, whatever that would be, because it's the same thing every time. But just like data leads, the variable comes in if you are pinging out to dynamic buyers and capturing their dynamic bid and their minimum duration in the custom delivery response. So this is where you can take different percentages based off of the bid that's returned back to, or based off of the bid that's returned back to you from the buyer. So you can do either like the matrix that Brett's looking at, or just a default profit margin. If it's 20%, they return $10, you carve out $2. Next ping, they return $20, you carve out $4. So probably some clients do have margin that resides at the source level, in which case it would be fixed for the whole source in the similar manner. But that is where you would carve out your margin. If you're getting pinged from a call seller and you are pinging out to a dynamic buyer.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and so that profit margin here could be set. It reads as this. So when you have a blank slate here, like the minimum price, right? So if the dynamic offer back from this buyer is between $0 and $50, I want to take out a 20% margin. But the default is anything outside of the max here. So anything over 50, I want to take out 25. So that's how, as Scott said, you could really pinpoint your pricing based upon the exact dynamic offer and how much margin you want to take out. But then, the default is that anything outside of that range. So that's for your ping post, really only the ping post.
Yeah, cool. All right, so let's I guess let's look at kind of the management or the day-to-day of that. So this system is just our demo system, so it doesn't have any live traffic coming in. But if you want to go back to the phone routing dashboard, kind of start there. We have clients that are actively monitoring this page for the totals, but also the current active calls at the bottom half, especially if you're managing tight concurrent limits. This can give you some visibility into that. But if you're like me, you're doing lots of other things, right? So webhooks are a good way to be notified when things happen. We have two webhooks that are pretty good in this use case. The first is IPR missed. I think we have them set up already, actually.
Okay.
So just as an FYI, for 2024, we do have a redesign of the webhooks in the works. But ultimately,
You didn't.
maybe I didn't set it up.
So yeah, now we can search though, right? So you just type in miss at the top here, and it will bring up IPR missed call.
IPR missed call, and the other one is just a simple lead declined. So the IPR missed call, you can set this up as an email, or Brett, if you go back to that notification type at the top, I think the so yeah, we can go to the either one, both of those. But the notification, if you choose function, there is, just so everybody knows, there are some really cool options here. So one, you can build a custom delivery and then assign that in the webhook. So if you have a sophisticated need to post data out, but in the
anything here, you can grab the ID number and just paste the ID number here, and that's all. It links those two together then.
But the other one that I wanted to show is the Slack. So if you are working in groups, Slack, you can set up a channel and then have these webhooks posted. So missed calls, declined calls, you can get the partner ID, the lead ID, so that you can jump on those and head off any problems that you may have with your transfer buyers before it becomes a big problem. So those are two good ones, in addition to all of the rest of the ones for managing partners, limits, things like that. And so then the last thing that we wanted to cover here before we open it up for questions is the reports. So, we have lots of different reports. Most of the reports that are for the data leads are also used in inbound phone. But this drill down report, I personally think is a very good one. Even if you just do a preview, or you can do the generate for today, or excuse me, this is going to show a total attempts, but also success and fails. So things where they didn't meet the minimum duration, which would show up as rollbacks, or failed attempts. And then ultimately that's going to boil that down to a revenue per attempt metric there. And so, that is something certainly to consider. We have clients that might sell their transfers at pretty widely different prices, or especially if you're pinging out to a dynamic buyer, in an individual transfer to transfer basis, it may be hard to see, they're bidding $2 on one and $50 on the next one. This kind of smooths that out by the partner so that you can see revenue per attempt, conversion rates, and things like that. And that will help you optimize the demand side of the transfers.
Yeah, and so best part about this report is this total rolled back attempt. So we talk about the minimum call time or minimum duration, right? Buyer 123 answers all the calls, but all of them only last 20 seconds. So they're not billed for any of those calls because they didn't last the minimum call time, say. That will show up in here as a total rolled back attempt. And when you click on here, it will then show you which lead IDs make up the ones that did this. And so that really can help you know who's getting calls, but then who's not actually finishing these calls and making revenue for that for you. So this report really helps identify which of those buyers fall into that category.
Cool. All right. So I'll take that back, Brett, to the screen.
Very good. Thanks.
So some other use cases, what we covered here was data and the call in one lead type, your inbound phone lead type. But as I mentioned at the beginning, it used to be where you would post data into a separate data only lead type and then send the call through the inbound phone. We still have clients that use that method. Most people getting set up now only have to resort to that if there's any technical limitations on your call center side. So, for example, the things that Brett showed with the direct post, we can set up through the Boberdoo form builder the ability for just a direct post form. You can dynamically assign those to your sources and have them go to a form on a URL that you own, submit the data, and then just send the call through Boberdoo. That would tie the data post and the call together. So if you do have technical challenges with a call center that you're working with, we can work with you to develop a solution, either a workaround or an alternative to what we went through here. We have lookup functions so that if a data is sitting in another lead type and a call comes in with the same phone number, we can send the data to the same person that takes the call. And then as far as the order, so Brett mentioned and emphasized here, right? Data first, then the call. Data first, then the call. I have seen where our clients have said that their call center can't do that. They have to send the call first and then the data. What we can do is build a custom lookup. And so it would be a custom project, but it is something where we could end up getting the data into the hands of the person that took the call. The big caveat there is that you can't route on it, right? It's just delivering the data is essentially a courtesy or a value add, but it cannot be used for routing. So we always want to focus on getting that data in ahead of the call. We do have a couple more upcoming webinars. We have a follow-up to our dynamic consent, where we're going to continue a lot of the questions we didn't even get to on our last call. We're going to be continuing that next week. And then the week after that, our CISO, Dan, love to hear it. Lots of ways that you can get in touch with us and take them all.